Yeah, we go to World Trade Organization and World Trade Partners. So when I talk about World Trade Organization, before I go further about World Trade Organization, I'll tell you that the owner or the head of World Trade Organization is a Nigerian and a person of Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She's an economist. That's her. They will go on. So here they said the World Trade Organization, WTO. The WTO was established in 1995, replacing a similar body called GATT, General Agreement of Trade and Tariffs. The WTO has 164 members and employs over 600 people, including lawyers, economists, WUSHis, statisticians, and communication experts. In 2015, the WTO had a budget of over $195 million. The WTO promotes free trade by persuading countries to abolish tariffs and other trade barriers. So basically, the aim and objective of the WTO is to persuade countries to abolish trade barriers. They want free trade between countries. That is the main objective of the WTO. Do you get the point?
Yeah.
So the WTO is the only international agency overseeing the rules of international trade. It policies free trade, it policies free trade agreements, settle trade disputes between governments, and organizes trade negotiation. WTO decisions are final, and every member must abide by its rulings. So when the US and the EU are in disputes over bananas or beef, it is the WTO that acts as judge and jury. WTO members have the power to enforce WTO decisions by punishing countries that have broken the rules. The main activities of the WTO are outlined. So before we go any further, so whenever there's trade disputes between countries, the WTO takes charge. So the ruling of the WTO is the final. That is the point. You get it? So what are those things that they do, the WTO? One, trade negotiation. The WTO aims to reduce or eliminate trade barriers through negotiation. It does this by encouraging countries to draw up trading agreements covering matters such as anti-dumping, subsidies, and product standards. The WTO aims to bring about trade liberalization and lays down procedures of settling disputes. The agreement reached between countries may change over time. Changes are needed because businesses operate in a dynamic world, with new products and new technologies being developed at any accelerated pace. So the trade negotiation. The trade union try to negotiate with countries to reduce trade barriers. So what they do is each country will come up with their rules, their regulation, and how they can reach consensus with other countries, and how they can set standards that every country would follow suit. That's trade negotiation. Implementation and monitoring. So the WTO employs various councils and committees to administer and monitor the application of the WTO rules of trade in goods, services, and intellectual property rights. For example, the WTO may examine trade policies to ensure that trade agreements are clear and well documented. All WTO members must conduct regular reviews of their trade policies and practices. Countries must also submit reports to the WTO as part of the monitoring process. So implementation and monitoring is talking about how these are, what we call it, rules are being enforced within countries. So countries will come up with their rules and regulations. They monitor them. They try to, the WTO controls the trading activity between countries. So that is the point, that they control the trading activities between countries. Their rules, their policies, and their, what do we call it? Policies and the approaches to policies. We call it, what do we use for that? Oh, policies and, when I remember, I'll say it anyway. So the trade union, basically, they try to monitor the activities of each country, how they deal with each other. So whenever there's going to be a problem, it's going to be through those books that they've written, those laws they've made between members. Settling trade disputes. So whenever there's disagreement between countries, the trade union that try to settle it, conflict between them. Then building memberships. They are the ones that tell countries, they encourage countries to be part of the WTO. Is it clear? Yeah. So go down, let's see. Let me just stop that. Criticisms of the WTO. What are the problems? What are the criticisms about WTO? One, they said, despite what seems to be good intentions of the WTO, it does face criticism. This comes mainly from anti-globalization bodies and environmental groups. For example, Global Exchange, a body that promotes people-centered globalization, makes the following claims about the WTO. One, it is undemocratic because WTO rules are written by and for corporations. So the views of consumers, environmentalists, human rights, and labor organizations are often ignored. Can you just drop that now, please? On desk. On desk. The first problem is that they say it is undemocratic. When they say it is undemocratic, it means people, they come up with these rules, and these rules are favorable to those countries or those businesses that are into trade. It is undemocratic because it is not accepted by everybody.
Views can be ignored.
Yeah, views can be ignored. If it's democratic, it means we all accept that this group should be in place. So that is the point I'm making. So it puts some people into vulnerability. So it favors the rights of corporations over those of workers. So it talks more about businesses, not the workers. That's the point I'm making here. So it's about what they produce, not who produces them. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Chewing gum, please, in the basket. Do you get the point, please? The third point, it is destroying the environment, because trade is about producing, trade is about production, right? And when we continue to produce, we use resources, we pollute air, pollution. That means that the environment is getting damaged. That's another point. Why is it a problem for them? Why are they criticizing the WTO for this? They are criticizing WTO for this because they feel WTO is encouraging production.
Yeah.
It's encouraging a lot of businesses to set in. So that's the point there. It favors wealthy nations over poorer ones. For example, negotiators from poor countries are not even invited to meetings, and then agreements are announced that poor countries do not even know where being discussed. Many poor countries do not have enough qualified staff to take part in all negotiations. Some do not have a permanent representative at the WTO. This prevents poor countries from representing their interests. Poor countries do, put the phone down, please. Poor countries do produce. They produce, yes or no?
Yeah.
They have resources, they have natural resources. They trade too, but they are not fully represented in the WTO, mainly because they don't have experts, they don't have well-qualified candidates to represent their country. They are unable to present candidates that are experts to represent them. Yeah. So this makes them to have, they become minority in WTO. So their interests cannot be protected. But they are trading. They are trading, but they don't have their interests protected. That's another criticism. Do you get the point, please? The last one here, they said it is causing hardship for poorer nations. Yes. Difficulty, because you can't say your mind in the meeting. You are not part of those that take decisions. You are not part of the members. So that means whatever you do, it's going to be to vulnerability. You're not going to have opportunity to explore. So look at what they wrote. They said, farmers produce enough goods, enough food in the world to feed everyone. However, it is argued that the corporate control of food distribution means millions of people worldwide suffer from lack of food. In developing countries, as many as 4 out of every 5 people make their living from the land. But the WTO insists that market forces should control agricultural policies rather than a commitment to food security and adequate incomes for farmers. Farmers are the ones that produce food that we eat, but they are not being taken care of. They don't have enough income. They are not subsidized. They are not being helped financially. And afterwards, WTO wants decisions to be taken from their own offices. Decisions that would, that the future of the farmers depends on, comes from the WTO, which is not ideal. Do you get the point?
Yeah.
Farmers are trying, they are striving to ensure that food is made available, but policies are not in place to protect them, to help them financially. Rather, they are making policies on how they distribute those food that they are struggling to produce. Is it clear? World trade patterns. They said, okay, now we go to world trade patterns. They said increase in world trade. World trade has increased enormously in the last 55 years. There's a figure for that. What are the reasons why there's increase in world trade. That is the point. First, better transport and communication. So there's increase in world trade these days because transportation is becoming better, communication is faster. So we can, even within a short period of time, we can transact, we can negotiate, and things are done. Relaxing of trade barriers. These days, trade barriers are softened. It's not like those days that all countries are keeping their resources to themselves.
Yeah.
These days, there are interdependence of resources between countries. So trade barriers are reducing. The third point, development of multinationals. A lot of world trade has been driven by large MNCs. A lot of multinational companies are setting up. So their businesses, foreign direct investment are allowed. So this increases world trade. Travel and consumer awareness. These days, consumer understands where to get their products, how to get their products, imports or exports. Trade agreements. Countries reach agreements these days. They always reach compromise to allow, for example, the trading blocks we talked about.
Yeah.
It's a trade agreement between countries. So this also encourages world trade. Sorry, are you here with me? Sit properly. Any question about that?
No.
Lots of trade in manufacturing. Hold on, please. Let me check. Now, trade in developed countries. We have developed countries. These are countries that have their largest production from the tertiary sector. That is what developed countries are. Okay. So here they say, although developing nations are contributing an increasing amount of world trade, it is the developed nations that continue to dominate. The figure shows that. Look at China, US, Germany, Japan, Holland, France, Korea, Italy. These are all developed countries. Why are they dominating? They are dominating because they have services, they have sectors. They are the ones dealing with the service sector. So whatever happens with the developing economies, they are the ones that take charge. So developing countries would extract raw materials, but they couldn't do anything with it until it goes to Europe. I think it's clear, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's all about that. Let me see what we need to know here. Okay, let's go to trade in developing countries. Here they said 40.4 shows clearly developing countries have increased their share of world trade between 1995 to 2014. So look at the share here. Developing countries are before 2014, they were having 1,248, but now they're having over 8,000. So things has changed. So why has things changed? One, an increase in net migration. So an increasing number of people are leaving developing countries to find work in developed countries. So as soon as they find work in developed countries, what happens afterwards? They come back to give their quota into the economy. They get the point. They get exposed in the world, they get exposed to how things are done abroad, and they come back. They gain experience and come back to use those experiences in their own country. Increased FDI in Africa. Many African nations have benefited from an increased amount of foreign direct investment from China. So a lot of Chinese companies are setting up in Africa, and that has also increased output in Africa. I think that is clear. Rise in commodity dependence. Many developing countries rely heavily on commodities for international trade. For example, China's interest in Africa is largely down to its large quantities of natural resources. So natural resources are mainly from Africa. So developed countries rely on these raw materials, these resources, to be able to bring out production. So that also increases the output of Africa. Rise in commodity, okay, we talked about that. Debt cancellation. A lot of African countries are in debt to maybe International Monetary Fund, IMF, and other countries. These days, the developed countries cancel their debts. So maybe Togo is owing Germany a certain amount of money. Germany government will say, okay, let's forget about it. Let's cancel it for them. So this allows Togo, for example, to increase its output because it's not paying any more debts.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Do we get the point we're making here?
Yeah.
Debt cancellation means some developed countries cancel debts of other African countries. As a result, these countries are able to invest that amount that is not being paid anymore to their own country. Reduction in barriers. Yeah, we talked about that. Trade reduction, trade barriers that have been reducing. So they have been softened. This allows developing countries to even trade with other countries. Then we'll go to the multi questions. Which of the following is an activity of the WTO? The World Trade Organization. What's that activity? Helping multinationals to develop their business vaccines, settling trade disputes between members, raising money for developing countries, creating new types of trade barriers.
That's B.
B, yes, it's B. Settling trade disputes. Which of the following? Look at figure 40.5. Go back to 40.5. But before then, it said, which of the following statement is true of the information shown in the graph? Let's go to 40.5. This is 40.4. Wait, 40.5. This is 40.3. This is 40.5.
Maybe the second one.
Oh, let's hold on, please. Let's go back. Look at 40.5. Figure 40.5. Okay. Here we have it. So we have the agriculture of exports, agriculture of imports between countries, okay? From 1961 to 2000. Export increases in 2000. Okay, so let's go back. The case study. But they say which of the following statements is true of the information shown by the graph? Agricultural imports are falling over the period. Before 1980, agricultural export exceeded agricultural import before 1980. No, let's take it one at a time. Agricultural imports are falling over the period. Let's check. Imports for the blue.
Yeah, it did.
It fell, right?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, let's check other options too. Before 1980, agricultural export exceeded agricultural imports. Before 1980. Agricultural import, the years, right? Can you see now?
In 1980, it was equal. It was the same.
In 1980,
yeah,
they are the same. It's equal. Yeah. In 1980, it's equal. So it's not B. It's not B. The answer is not B. No, don't tell me that, please. You check this thing. Agricultural exports are falling over the period. No, it increases, right? Export increases over the period. Export increases, so it's not C. We'll check D. Developing countries export more agricultural goods than developed countries. We don't even know development. We don't know.
That has nothing.
It has. Yeah. All these information are for developed and undeveloped countries, but we don't know which ones are developing. So the answer is A, right?
Yeah.
That's in the chapter. Okay. And